So I'm going to stop now because we've been going on way too long. But does it even, yes?
Well, as you're thinking about and working on writing this novel based in historical fact, have you yourself kind of decided at what point you're going to be happy making your own reality, and at what point you're going to say, no, I need to go check that, I need to be, you know, to where when you're done, you're going to say, well, it's like, you know, half truth, half my fiction, or 3/4 one way or the other. I mean, how are you going about sort of thinking about that?
I'm finding that if it's a detail that interests me, then it's going to be part of the world that I describe. And so the thing about the Trans-Mississippi exposition is there's so many rich details and so much, there's so much happening and so many peculiarities and so much that's metaphorically rich that it's you could write 100 novels based on it, you know. And so it's really a matter of finding those details that fit the fictional intentions of the world that I'm creating. Because I'm not trying to write a literal representation of that era, mostly because I can't, because I wasn't there. But I want to create a kind of fantastical version of that. And the great thing about the exposition is that it's sort of fantastical already, and so all those details create this otherworldliness. And so ideally, I think you want there to be the essence of truth, and that your reader will follow you through that. If they know that it's a novel, then they'll accept that you're taking some liberties. But it does become complex because you don't want to alienate the reader or to mislead. But I think the mission will be to prepare the reader for this strangely realized version of the facts.
Going back to people of the book in terms of the way that it's organized, so that you have Hannah Heath, who is kind of the modern day character who's carrying along the basic plot. But then each one of these explanations, if you would comment on the fact that it's sort of interesting that you don't really get a sense for what Hannah Heath's knowledge of each of those episodes really is. In other words, each one of those sort of becomes a separate entity into itself, and she never really comments too much on what her own discovery has been. But the author gives us all this additional information. If you would just...
Well, I suppose because Geraldine Brooks is, what is it's first person, obviously, so that presents some limitations for the author. But at the same time, she's using a kind of language and a kind of perspective that rises above those devices, I guess. So I'm not sure exactly if I can articulate, you know, what she's doing, but there's a commitment, definitely. When I'm reading it, I sense a commitment to the very facts of what she's describing. I believe every detail that she's describing. I mean, I realize that Hannah's a fictional character, and that and that this isn't necessarily an actual book restorer that we're meeting here. But I sense that Brooks has done the research enough that this could very well be a restorer. This is how a restorer lives. And I may be wrong about that. Sure. But I believe it. And I think that's what I tell my students in creative writing classes too, is that as long as you write with some level of authority, your reader will follow you everywhere and won't doubt you one bit, and it won't be something you ever have to deal with. But if you mislead the reader becomes suspect of your abilities and your knowledge, then all is doomed, basically. So you have to maintain authority like every step of the way to get them to the end of the novel.
Thank you.
Probably pretty safe in that occupation, since there probably are a lot of book restorers in the world to begin with.
Right.
Well, wait a minute, and that's an interesting thing that comes out too, which is that she makes the big deal about saying that she's a book conservator, not a book restorer.
Right, exactly.
You know,
Yeah, she's
for
not
her,
restoring the book.
she's not restoring it.
Steady.
She's,
Yeah.
True.
yeah.
sense, as you teach your students at UNL and work with writers, it seems like there's a trend these days for the reader to be more willing to want historical fiction and to want those details and to delve back into history as opposed to a decade or two ago when we're still kind of enamored with our future and our present. I mean, do you sense a trend that we're getting to like historical-based fiction more?
It could be, or it could be that historical-based fiction is becoming better, perhaps, or more authors with integrity are approaching it, and as a result, whereas one time it might have been a genre that might have been looked down upon by some authors as a kind of like romance or something. I mean, like so often we associate historical drama with romance, and but I think there have been enough great historical novels or novels in which history plays a part that the readership has developed and more and more people are engaging with those books. Of course, there's also the Da Vinci Code, which sort of revolutionized kind of the marketplace in a sense too. So even though that's, I don't know if you would call that a historical novel, it does certainly deal with history.
There are a lot of probably books about authors, not necessarily about books, but I was just kind of thought one of the earlier examples I kind of experienced was Kurt Vonnegut creating Kilgore Trout.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And actually a book by a different author was written under the name Kilgore Trout, I think, at some point.
Yeah, right.
Another science fiction novel. So
right, absolutely.
interesting how that worked out.
Yeah, I mean, we're as readers, we tend to be kind of fascinated with those worlds, I think, with fictional authors and real authors. And also, another kind of trend worth citing is the return of literary characters in contemporary novels. To see, Tiny Tim, reconceived by a contemporary author, or Lolita told through her point of view in the book Lowe's Diary. And there's a book called Angels and Apostles, I believe is the name of it, that tells the story of Pearl, having grown up from a Scarlet Letter. And so there's this kind of literary scavenging that writers do, and that proves to be quite popular because then it means that this new book already has somewhat of a built-in audience, those people who want to continue off that story.
And a new one too about a guy who was in Little Women.
March.
Yeah, March.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
By
It's
Geraldine
also by
Brooks.
Geraldine
Yeah.
Brooks, too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
E.L. Doctorow, plays with that a lot. Ragtime, of course, is full of historical characters. His new book is about the Collier brothers, famous hoarders in New York. And so it's just this act of looking at our past stories and those things that have captivated us and giving them a new set of circumstances or a new perspective that can be satisfying to writers and readers and to publishers who have a built-in marketing platform.
Other questions for Timothy?
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you so much.